I'm here, Huey, and I am just delighted to introduce our speaker. And I know he's here because I saw his name come up. There he is. Hey, Mark.
Hi,
Mark,
Ann.
hi. Mark Schulman has spent his career as a computer instructor, a software designer, and a small business owner. He has taught a wide range of programming courses for major corporations and worked on large software development projects. He currently works as the IT manager for a group of family practice physicians, as well as a small company that runs clinical drug trials. His major geek interest these days is the computer technology that made the moon landings possible in the 1960s. He lives near Orlando, Florida. Do you think your internet activities are safe from prying eyes just because you turned on your browser's privacy mode? Think again. Learn what's safe and what's not, and how you can cover your tracks and keep your internet activities safe and private, especially when using public Wi-Fi hotspots. So here he is. Let's give a warm STUG welcome to Mark Schulman. Thank you, Mark.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ann. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. Hey, it looks like it worked. Okay, can everybody see my screen and can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
fantastic. Thanks. All right. Well, Ann did a great job on the introduction, so I don't have much to add to it. The only thing I'm going to add is that we're going to talk about a lot of different software in this presentation, and I wanted you to know that I mostly have no affiliation with any of them. And there's a couple of exceptions towards the end, and I'll point those out when they get there. But all the software that I'm going to mention here are just pieces of software that I've used along the way and I like a lot. And maybe during the question and answer, if you've got one that you like better that does the same thing, by all means, throw it in. So we're going to talk about a lot of different topics here. They're not all listed here. We're going to talk about browser privacy a little bit. We'll talk about VPNs, talk about email privacy, phone privacy. It's kind of a smorgasbord of different things you can do in your digital life to maintain your privacy a little bit. And I say a little bit because it's just about a losing case these days, but we'll talk about a lot of things that you can do to help keep yourself private. So the first thing I want to talk about is what we actually mean by that. So I'm going to give you an easy plan for keeping your life private, and it is just live like this, and nobody will know anything about you. But for most of us that want to live in the real world and interact with other people and use the internet and that sort of thing, it gets a little more difficult. So complete privacy is impossible unless you're living off the grid. So I want to talk about I want to talk a little bit about what that actually means to us, and you're going to see this theme over and over as we go through this presentation. So when you watch a lot of videos on YouTube or you hear a lot of different speakers, they'll almost present privacy as if it's black and white. So here's your average user over here who all of his or her private information is leaking out everywhere and everybody knows everything about this person. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have this privacy obsessed user whose whole life revolves around privacy. And that's all he or she ever thinks about. And everything they do in their life is to protect their own privacy. Well, in reality, it's more of a spectrum like this, where there are people that are privacy obsessed and there are other people that don't care at all about privacy. And most of us fall somewhere in between. We want to keep our lives private, but we don't want our whole lives wrapped up in maintaining our privacy. And here's the key point. What we find is that privacy and convenience are usually opposed to each other. We can stay really private if we're willing to go to a lot of trouble and give up a lot of convenience. Whereas for most of us, we're just not willing to go to quite that much trouble, and we're willing to give up a little bit of privacy if it means that our lives are a little more convenient. And by the way, I kind of feel like I could just as well take this diagram and put security over on the left-hand side, that security and convenience are kind of diametrically opposed as well. So you're going to see all through this presentation, we're going to talk about how much trouble do we really want to go to preserve how much privacy. So what does privacy on the internet actually mean? And I was listening to a YouTube video, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and it was by a guy named Josh Summers, who I really like, and I've got a link to the video if you want to, you can go check out his channel. I think he's really good. But he was talking about privacy, and he gave a quote that I thought was really good, and I wrote it down, and it's this. Privacy on the internet is just being intentional about who controls your online life. So I know there's people out there who want to collect as much data about me as they possibly can. And I want to give them as little data as I possibly can. And as I go through my online life, I want to decide, okay, am I willing to give up a little privacy here in exchange for some convenience? Or is this the hill to die on where I just don't want them having this information? And obviously it depends on what information they want and who wants it and that sort of thing. So I'm going to mention some sage advice that I got from my dad. And this, he wasn't talking about privacy on the internet, but I think this applies to just about everything in life. He said, perfect is the enemy of good enough. So that's what we want to do here. We want to have good enough privacy where people still learn some things about us because we just can't avoid that. But on the other hand, we feel like our really important information is private. So you, I've got a typo here. You need to be the one to decide how much convenience you're willing to trade for privacy. And for different people, the answer is going to be different. Some people are going to want to be very private. Some people are going to want a lot of convenience. And it's back to what we talked about before. But I want you to be able to understand what you can do to stay more private, and then you can make an informed decision. And I'll give you a great example. I just stumbled across this one just a few months ago, and I think this one's really interesting. Has anybody heard of a company called Telly? Yes, no, no. So Telly is a company, I think it's just telly.com. Telly is a company that will give you a free TV. And not just any free TV. I really love the design of this thing. You notice it's got kind of a big screen on top, and then there's a sound bar, and then there's this little thin horizontal screen at the bottom where they can display all kinds of information like stock tickers and weather and that sort of thing. So I actually like the TV a lot, and they'll give it to you for free. And it comes with all sorts of streaming services. So they don't have the big ones like Disney Plus, but they do have some streaming services where they provide all kinds of content, and it's absolutely free. So what's the catch? Well, the catch is you have to give them all your personal information and agree to watch ads that they will supply. And that's a lot of what they do on that little small screen at the bottom, is show you pretty much continuous ads. And so here's a case where if you want to make the decision that you're willing to give up all of your personal data to these guys, they'll give you some really nice benefits. So, but obviously I'm not willing to do that. I wish I could buy that TV because I really kind of like the TV, but I'm not willing to give up all my personal data to them. So let's go through some of the things that you can do to preserve your privacy and talk about some of the traps where different people can get different information about you. So the first thing I want to talk about is the number one culprit to privacy. And if you get nothing else out of this, I want you to at least hear me on this one. The number one thing that compromises your privacy is Facebook. Their whole purpose is to gather information on you and sell it to people. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But I really want you to understand that there is a big privacy problem there. I have a Facebook account. I gave them as little information as I could. And the only thing I ever do is when someone contacts me and says, my wedding photos are up on Facebook, I'll go look at them, and that's it. So most people don't realize how much information they actually reveal in Facebook and that their whole life is just laid out for advertisers in Facebook. So I'm not going to say anything more about that, but if you really care about your privacy, Facebook's not a good place for you. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is browser privacy. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick tips to preserve your privacy on when you're using a browser. The first thing is it's probably not a good idea to use Google Chrome. Google Chrome collects a lot of information on people, or allows Google to collect a lot of information about people. And there are some good alternatives. It's probably a good idea to not use Google Chrome if you really care about your privacy. Now, Chrome right now has about a 60% market share. Excuse me. So a lot of people clearly are not worried about this. Google wants your data, and Chrome is one of the big ways that they collect it from you. So there are better browsers out there if you care about privacy. Here are 4 that I like. I could come up with probably another 4 without thinking about it too hard. Vivaldi and Brave are based on Chrome, but they don't have quite the same tendency to send information back to the mothership that Chrome does. So if you're used to using Chrome, you could probably switch to Vivaldi or Brave and hardly know the difference. I'm a Firefox fan, so I like using Firefox. They leak a little bit of information too, but there are other browsers based on Firefox. One of them is called Waterfox that is focused on maintaining your privacy. So if you like Firefox, but you want to increase your privacy, Waterfox is not a bad way to go. There's another browser, by the way, called LibreWolf, 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 that, like Firefox, is based, I'm sorry, like Waterfox, is based on Firefox, but is very privacy focused. So there are some good browsers to use if you want to try to increase your privacy. Another tip, install uBlock Origin. It's a plugin that's available for just about every browser. You can get it in the Chrome store or in Mozilla's add-on store, and it'll go a long way to keep websites from tracking you and gathering information. I'm missing a slide here. Wow. Um, well, yeah, I think it's later. Yeah, it's with search engines. Okay, never mind. So one of the things I want to talk about, if you're really interested in browser privacy, is portable apps. And in particular, there's one that I want to show you. So what is a portable app? It's an app that can be run from a flash drive. You never have to install it the way you do with a normal app, and all the data that portable app generates is stored on the flash drive as well. Now, why is that important to privacy? Because there's a cool little portable app amongst the thousands and thousands of portable apps out there. There's a portable version of Firefox. So what you can do with this is you can put Firefox on a flash drive, and anytime you walk up to a computer that's not yours, you can pop this flash drive in. You can run Firefox off of the flash drive and do whatever browsing you want. And when you're all done, you can take that flash drive out, and it leaves no traces of anything you've done on the computer that you were using. So let's say I'm visiting my daughter and I want to browse the internet. If I just pull up her browser, then she's going to have a complete history of everywhere I went, and she'll be able to see a lot of what I did. I wouldn't normally care, but I could imagine visiting some other folks where I might care. So By using Firefox Portable, I can put this flash drive in her computer. I can use Firefox to browse the internet. And when I pull it out, there's no traces left on her computer. So here's a quote from the people that produce Portable Firefox. Does Portable Firefox leave any personal data? No. All your cookies and other data is self-contained on your portable device, that is your flash drive. At no time is any personal data stored on the machine. So let me show you how that works. So I have actually, I've got a flash drive plugged into this computer. It's my G drive, and I hope y'all can see this okay. And I have a folder here called Portable Firefox. Now, I've already downloaded it and put it on the flash drive. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But if I go into this folder, I can see there's a program called Firefox Portable. Oops, which is already running. Uh-oh. Phew. Okay, this is the problem with demos. Is it really? Well, this will teach me to reboot my machine before I do a demo. I don't know where it is, so it's not going to let me run it. Um, and I've never seen this not work before. But what would normally happen is I would double click that, it would come up, it would look just like the Firefox browser, it would work just like the Firefox browser, but everything I did would be stored on my machine here. And I'm really curious why that's not working. Okay, well, let's go on. Okay, so there's where you can get it. And trust me, it usually works. So I have no idea what was going on there. So how does this help? Well, it keeps people from rummaging through your browser history. And it enables you to, most importantly for me, work on a work computer or a friend's computer without leaving any data behind. And one of the places I used to use this, when I was working for a large company, they were when we were on our lunch break, they were okay with using the work computer to browse and do personal stuff. So nobody had a problem with that. But I had a problem with that sometimes because I didn't want the company to be able to look at my PC and see that I had been, browsing for engagement rings for my wife or something like that. So I had a flash drive at work that had Firefox Portable on it. And when I'd do personal stuff on my lunch break, I'd plug it in. And that way, all my browser history and everything else that I did while I was on my lunch break did not get left on that machine. It can help some websites from gathering information on you, and I'm not going to go into detail on that. It does not prevent spying from your local ISP, and we're going to talk a lot about that coming up, but it doesn't help with that. I want to talk a little bit about using public Wi-Fi, and it's something that most of us do more and more. We're sitting in an airport or sitting in a restaurant. We pull out our phones, we connect to their Wi-Fi, and browse the internet, download stuff, whatever. I want to make you aware of some downsides to this. So first of all, vitally important that when you go to a website, you're using HTTPS. That is, that the web address that you're using starts with HTTPS instead of just HTTP. What that means is the contents of everything you send back and forth to the website is encrypted, and so nobody can see the data that you're exchanging with the website. So really important. However, some people believe that if they use HTTPS, they're completely protected. It is important to remember that even if you use HTTPS, some hacker can still see what sites you're going to. So you could be in the airport on their public Wi-Fi and you think you're completely protected. and you get on and you decide you're going to do a little banking while you're waiting for your flight. And so you go to Bank of America's website, let's say. Well, that hacker sitting 2 rows down now knows that you bank with Bank of America. Now, whether or not they can do anything with that, who knows? But it does reveal some information about you. So you can actually gather a lot of information about people just looking at the websites that they go to. Paid networks used to be common. They're really not so much anymore, but it's important to understand that as far as privacy goes, it doesn't offer much protection. People can still tell what websites you're going to. One really good tip is when you're in a public place, turn off your wireless radio when not in use. We're going to talk about that a little more when it's coming up. But every laptop, every phone gives you a way to turn off your Wi-Fi, and it's actually a good idea to do that if you're not using it. And everything we've talked about here applies to hotels, applies to airports, restaurants, anywhere you're using public Wi-Fi. These are all good tips to remember. Okay, let's talk about search engines a little bit. This was the slide I thought I'd left out. So best to avoid Google if you can. Again, Google's collecting information on you. That's what they're in business to do. So when you want to do a web search, consider using some of these places as well. DuckDuckGo, Startpage, and search.brave.com are all good search engines that have a heavy focus on privacy, and they're not going to track anything you do. They're not going to store any information about you. They're not going to track you. So these are all good places to go. And if you're interested in accessing artificial intelligence, instead of using Perplexity or ChatGPT or one of those other folks, which also track what you do, consider using duck.ai or search.brave.com. Those are all AI sites that don't track anything you do. Now, here's the thing. Do I think these are better than Google in terms of the results that they provide? No, I don't. I've paid a lot of attention, and I honestly believe that Google produces the best results of anybody. And that's why they're so popular. But what I like to do is consider these search sites and these AI sites to be my first pass at things. So when I'm doing a search, for example, I use Startpage a lot. So I'll go to Startpage. I had a doorknob break today. And I point that out because what do you do when something breaks? You go do a web search and figure out how to fix it. So I went to Startpage and I typed in the description of what had gone wrong with my doorknob, and it took me right to a page that had the answer on it that I needed. Now, if they hadn't produced a good result for me, I eventually would have gone to Google and done a search there because Google typically does give more complete results. But in this case, Search or Startpage did everything I needed, and so I got to stick with them. So again, it's a matter of if you want convenience, just make Google your default browser and use or your default search engine. Use it all the time. You'll get really good results, and you've made the decision that you're going to give up a little bit of privacy in order for the convenience of always having Google available. I would rather use one of these other search engines, and then when I don't get the results I need, then I go to Google. All right, next topic. A lot of different topics. I want to talk about VPNs a little bit. I'm a big fan of VPN, but most of us suffer from what you might call VPN overload. If you watch videos on YouTube or you go to social media, there's ads for VPNs everywhere. And there's hundreds of providers who are providing VPN services. And those ads will contain dire warnings and extravagant claims. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what can a VPN do for you? How can it protect your privacy? And what won't it do? And what are some good ones that you might look at? So what are the dangers? Well, we already talked about many people feel that if they just use HTTPS in the browser and they get that little padlock in the browser bar that tells them they're protected, they think nobody can see what they're doing. And yes, but first of all, there are still some websites out there that don't use HTTPS. But more importantly, the bad guys may not be able to see the message, but they can still see the envelope. And let me give you an old time reference to what I'm talking about here. So back in the old days, we might send a letter that looked like this. So there's some information to my bank inside that envelope, and the mail handlers that are handling that envelope, they can't see the information that's inside the envelope, but they immediately know something about me. They know who I am, and they know that my bank is Orlando Savings Bank, let's say. So why is that important? Well, they might be able to target some ads at me. I'd be a good candidate to be targeted with ads to switch to other banks. But also, if they hear me tell somebody, hey, my banking password is such and such, then they've got the missing piece of information they need now. They know who I bank with. So again, I don't want any more information leaking out about me than there has to be. So this was what we did years ago. These days, we send TCP/IP packets down the internet. And if you know what that is, I'm happy for you. Doesn't matter. But here's an example, and you can see there's a bunch of encrypted data in there, so they can't see what I'm sending to this website, but they can see that I'm writing to a website called Mail Order Brides, and that sure tells them an awful lot about me that I may not want anybody to know. So sometimes just knowing what websites you're in contact with can really be more information than you really want people to know. So there's information there. Even with the encryption, there's still information that people on your network and that your internet service provider can see. And your internet service provider very likely is collecting information on you, and many internet service providers sell that information to advertisers. So imagine an internet service provider that knows who your bank is, what YouTube channels you like, or at least that you use YouTube a lot, what social media platforms you hang out on, and they know that you keep going to diaper stores, so it must be that, or baby stores, so it must be that you just had a new baby, and so you can be targeted by advertisers that way. You can learn a lot of things about people just by knowing what websites they go to. So what is a VPN? Well, VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, which really tells us absolutely nothing about what it does. So let's look at what happens when you normally browse the internet. So you're sitting there and you type an address in your web browser on your computer, and that forms a request that you want to look at a web page. So that information goes to your wireless router, most likely, and then your router sends that information to your internet service provider. Your internet service provider sends it out over the internet, and it eventually gets to the web server that manages the website that you're trying to access. So that might be Amazon's web server or Google's web server or Facebook or whoever else. And when they send the web page to you, this whole process goes in reverse. And they send it out over the internet. It goes from there to your internet service provider through your wireless router to you. And there's all kinds of ways that hackers could snoop along the way. So somebody could break into your wireless network and intercept some traffic there. That's actually not very hard these days. Your internet service provider can be gathering information on you, and even the hackers along the internet can manage to get some information from you. So what a VPN does is they put a server between the internet and the web server that you're trying to access. And they also put software on your computer. And what that does is it encrypts all the traffic between you and the VPN server. So that looks like this. So the whole green area is completely encrypted. So it means that before the data ever leaves your laptop, it winds up getting encrypted. It travels through your wireless router encrypted. It goes through your ISP encrypted. It travels the internet mostly encrypted. It hits the VPN server. They decrypt it, and send it onto the web server. The web server that's going to process your request and send you back the page. When the data comes back, it goes through the same process in reverse. So what does this mean? What are the advantages for you? Well, people on your network and your internet service provider cannot learn anything about what you're doing, because as the data passes through your network and through your internet service provider, it's encrypted by the VPN. The ISP only sees that you're exchanging data with the VPN server. So they can tell you're on the internet, they can tell you're sending and receiving data, but they have no idea who that's with or what you're doing. And the website, let's go back to the diagram. The website doesn't see the request as coming from you, it sees the request as coming from the VPN server. And as long as you're not actually logged on to the web server, then it does a lot to maintain your anonymity on the website. Now, there are a lot of websites that we have to log into. For example, when you go to Amazon, typically you're going to log in under your Amazon account. So now they know everything about you. Amazon does. So a VPN isn't going to change that. But if you're, let's say, I want to get on Facebook and look at my cousin's wedding pictures, then I don't have to log into Facebook. I can go to the website, browse it anonymously. I think you can still do that, maybe not. And they will have no idea who it is. They won't be able to track me in any way if I use a VPN because I'm not logged in. So it's useful for hiding the sites you visit from your ISP and from anyone else on your network. Make sure that no information is revealed on public hotspots, and hides information from the website as long as you don't log into the website. But obviously some websites you do have to log into. One of the things I used to do this all the time before COVID, was I loved to go to McDonald's, buy a hamburger, and sit there and work for an hour or two, as long as they weren't busy. And I loved doing that. And of course, I was using their Wi-Fi when I did that. I never would have done that without a VPN, because anybody on the McDonald's network could have seen the websites I was going to if I hadn't had a VPN. So the bit about protecting your privacy from other people on the network is especially important when you're using a public network like McDonald's or an airport or a hotel. So I had a demo, or I sometimes do a demo about connecting to a VPN, but I actually can't show you that here because if I get on my VPN, it will disconnect my connection on Zoom. So I can't do that here. So to connect on my VPN, all I have to do is run a piece of software that they provide for me, click a button, and it connects, and I'm protected. And I get this nice green screen that says you're protected, and that's really all there is to it. So VPNs are drop dead simple to use. There's another advantage to VPNs, and they love to advertise this, but it really is a big advantage, that a VPN, your location, as far as the website you're accessing is concerned, is wherever the VPN server is. And all the VPNs have servers all over the world, and you can control which one of those you connect to. So, for example, when I fire up my VPN, I can tell it that I want to connect to their VPN server in, I don't know, Sweden. And then if I connect to any website, they're going to think I'm in Sweden. Now, why is this important? Because a lot of streaming services, a lot of TV services will only provide certain programming to people that are in their country. So we went to Australia many years ago. It's been well over a decade ago. And we fell in love with the TV program that they had over there. It was called the Gruen Transfer. I have no idea if it's still on. But when I got home, I really wanted to watch it. And I found that when I went to the Australian TV station's website, they said, "You're not in Australia, you can't watch it for copyright reasons." So with a VPN, I could connect to the VPN server that was in Australia, and then I could go to their website and they saw the location of the VPN server and they figured, okay, this guy's in Australia, we can show him the program. And it worked really great. So here's a diagram of what that looks like. So I'm sitting here in Florida and I can connect to the VPN server in the UK. And then from there, I can browse the BBC website and they think I'm in the UK and they will serve me up uh, programming that's only available if you're in Great Britain. Now, these days, it's kind of hit or miss. They do have some ways of telling where you really are, even if you're using a VPN. So it doesn't always work, but it works most of the time. Now, there's a lot of extravagant claims for VPNs. What will they do? But more importantly, what won't they do? They don't protect you from malware or scams. They don't make you anonymous if you log into a website, and it has nothing to do with email. So this is strictly for web browsing. So we're going to talk about email privacy here in a minute, but a VPN won't do anything to protect your email privacy, although they sometimes infer that they'll help with that. And there's kind of a dark underbelly to VPNs, and I've got a YouTube link there if you want to see some more about this. But there are some VPNs that, despite what they claim, can actually collect data on you. So the whole purpose of a VPN is to keep other people from collecting data on you, but sometimes the VPNs will actually do it themselves. And I said earlier that there are hundreds of VPN companies, but it turns out that there are several large corporations that own a bunch of them. So you might be trying to decide which of 20 different VPNs you're going to use and find out that they're all actually owned by the same company and they're really all the same product. And here's the scary part. 33% of the VPNs are actually owned by China. So, or by companies in China, which I don't trust with my privacy. So I'm going to give you some recommendations on what to do there if you're interested in using a VPN. Now, here's a scary thought. You see a lot of ads for VPNs on YouTube and on social media. Well, the people who are doing the advertising for those VPNs earn a 40% commission. So they have a big incentive to run these ads for VPNs, even without knowing much about it, or even if they're a little suspicious that maybe the VPN isn't doing the right thing. You have to be a little weary when they're paying this kind of commission. So the big tip I would give you, first of all, is avoid any VPN that's free. And some examples are one-click VPN and free VPN. And I don't know about those two in particular, but in general, these companies have to make money somewhere. And if they're not charging for the VPN, then they must be collecting data somewhere along the way. They can't provide this service for free. So I'm a little leery of a VPN that doesn't charge for their service. NordVPN and ExpressVPN, I don't think they were doing this maliciously, but both of them got caught keeping information about customers that they had claimed they weren't keeping. And again, I don't think they were selling it or doing anything malicious. I think it was just they screwed up and they wound up keeping some information that they shouldn't have. So I did a little research earlier in the year, and these are the five that I came up with. And I have no connection to any of these, so um, I'm not earning any commissions. I'm not earning a 40% commission from any of these. So I actually use TunnelBear. And my sole reason for picking TunnelBear is they have some really cute animations when it connects. And I was kind of charmed by that. I think all of these are good. Mulvad has got a really good reputation. Viper VPN, iVPN, and Proton VPN is probably the most famous of these five. They've got a solid reputation for privacy. So I think what I would do if I were looking for a VPN is I'd take these five and just go check prices on them and go with whoever's got the best deal and maybe try one out next year when it comes up for renewal. They typically cost somewhere in the range of $60 to $70 per year. So it's not cheap. But again, I think it's worth paying for because, as I've read many times, if If it's free, then you're not the customer, you're the product. So I love having a VPN. I still work in McDonald's occasionally. I would never consider working in McDonald's or an airport without using a VPN. I don't use it at home, but I think it's a great privacy tool to have. Okay, I want to talk about email privacy a little bit and some things you can do because probably the majority of the information people leak out on the internet is in email. So let's talk about that a little bit. So let's first of all get a good grip on how much email privacy you have to begin with. So as far as email privacy goes, there isn't any. It's important to understand that email transmissions are made in the clear, which is to say there is no encryption standard for email that everybody uses. So when you send an email to your bank, it's traveling over the internet as plain text, and you're just hoping nobody sees it. So you really have to be careful about what you send in email. Your email passes through a whole bunch of servers on its way to wherever it's going. Those servers, you have no idea who owns them. They are not owned by your internet service provider or by your email company necessarily. They're typically owned by large corporations that make up the internet backbone. So you really have no idea if somebody might be snooping at one of these companies. And I think it's really good to remember the advice your mother gave you when you're growing up, and that is be careful with that thing. You don't know where it's been. And that's doubly true of email. You have no idea where your email's been or who might have looked at it, and it is not encrypted. So, what can you do about that? Most free email providers don't really respect your privacy. If you have a free email account, Google is very plain about this as far as Gmail goes. They're scanning your emails, collecting information, and targeting ads at you. And if you're okay with that, then okay. And many people are. Most people probably are. But just understand that they're doing that. There are some providers that are really respectful about your privacy. Here's four of them that are really well known: Proton Mail, Start Mail, Tutanota, and Zoho Mail. And these are paid services where one of the things you're paying for is they are going to protect your privacy. One of the cool things about this is that if you send mail on one of these services to somebody else that has the same service, then your email is encrypted the entire way. So if I have Proton Mail and I send it to another Proton Mail user, then it is actually safe and secure the entire way. A good alternative, if you're worried about your emails being intercepted, is to use encrypted attachments. And this is a technique I really love. So both people have to use the same software, and you have to exchange passwords some other way, typically by text messages. Microsoft Office has got this capability built in, and there's lots of software that'll do it. And I'd just like to give you a quick demo of what that might look like. So let's say I had some sensitive information that I wanted to send to somebody. And I know that if I put it in an email, there is the chance that it could be intercepted and somebody might be able to see it. So I'm going to start an email. Open up my email provider here. And I'm going to compose a message. And I'm actually going to send it to myself. And for the subject, I'm going to put information that we discussed. And I know if I just type the email, it's not safe. But what I could do is I could open Microsoft Word and I could type the public offering of corporation XYZ is going to happen Friday. This has not been announced, so keep it private. Okay, so that's some sort of stock related message. I don't know. That may not make sense. But anyway, that's the message I want to send. So what I'm going to do is here in Microsoft Word, I'm going to go to File, Info, Protect Document, Encrypt with Password. And I'm going to put in a password. And it's going to prompt me for it again just to make sure I typed it correctly. And now I'm going to save the document just as I normally would. And I'm going to save it to my downloads folder, wherever that is. Downloads, message, message to Mark. Okay, and I can just attach that to the email. Download and all right, where'd it go? I did save it, didn't I? Oh, wrong drive. There we go. Okay, and it attaches it. Now, if somebody intercepts the email along the way and tries to look at that, they will not be able to see anything. And if they download it, say we are having trouble previewing this file. If they download it and try to open it, there it is. It prompts them for a password. And if they don't know that password, they'll never be able to look at this file. On the other hand, when I receive it on the other end, if I've texted the password to that person and they type in the correct password, then it opens up in Word just fine. And there's the message. So I'm a big fan of this technique of using encrypted attachments if you're sending anything that's in the least bit sensitive. Okay. All right. I'm a little short on time. I'm going to skip one other demo here. I want to talk real quickly about multiple email addresses. One of the biggest things you can do to boost your privacy is have multiple email addresses. And I do this. So I have several different email addresses. And yes, it's a pain, but remember this idea of privacy versus convenience. And I watched a speaker once, or I was listening to a speaker, and he said, at a minimum, everybody ought to have at least 4 different email accounts. One for high importance websites, one for low importance websites, one for friends, and one for social media. And the idea is if one of these gets hacked, it won't affect the others. So, and this is particularly important with the high importance and low importance websites. So, if you have a website that's got just trivial information on it, then those people are probably not putting a lot of effort into security. And so there's a very good chance that they'll get hacked and that your email address might get released. When it comes to companies like an investment company, a bank, a health-related company, your doctor's office, I would consider those high importance websites, and I want them to use, I know they're going to go to a lot of trouble to protect my privacy and protect their security. And so I want to give that email address only to people that I know are really going to guard it really well. I also want to talk about disposable email addresses, which is something I just absolutely love. So sometimes somebody will request your email address in exchange for something that you want. Maybe you want to read an article. you want to get a free recipe, and they'll only give it to you if you give them your email address. I ran into this just the other day. I've run into it hundreds of times. And I don't want to give these people my email address. And this is where a disposable email address comes in really handy. So there are lots of sites that'll provide disposable email addresses for you. Great for things like we just discussed. And some services will give you an email address that's good for a short period of time, some for a long period of time. I'm going to show you some short-term ones that I think are really good. So these are three that I find that I found and I've used. One of them's Gorilla Mail, and the only real problem with Gorilla Mail is trying to remember how to spell it, but they're really good. There's one called 10minutemail.com. I bet you can't guess how long the disposable email addresses are good for. And then there's one called fakemail.net. And they all do kind of the same thing. They will give you an email address that you can use for some very short period of time, or for some, it's not always real short. You can do it for a few days even, but it'll be for some short period of time. So I'd like to do a quick demo that I think's a lot of fun with Gorilla Mail. So I mentioned to you, and actually, just because I have so much trouble spelling Gorilla Mail, I'm going to copy and paste it. I don't have it bookmarked in this browser. Okay, so I mentioned that we had gone to Australia many years ago, and my wife fell in love with an animal they have there called a wombat. And here is a website that's all about wombats. And you can see that they're really just adorable little animals. And so this is a website devoted to wombats. And hey, they have a newsletter that you can subscribe to, or I'm sorry, they have a fact sheet. And it says, enter your email address below, and we'll send you a link to our world famous wombat fact sheet. We'll also sign you up for hourly fundraising emails and loads of wombat advertisements. Well, gosh, the fact sheet sounds great, but the fundraising emails and the advertisements don't sound so great. So a disposable email address would be just the thing. So I'm going to go to Gorilla Mail. And this is what the website looks like. It's really basic. And they have made up for me a really obnoxious looking email address, but it is a valid email address. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go back over to the Wombat Fact website. And I'm going to paste in that email address and click submit. And they say, check your email. There's a link to your Wombat fact sheet waiting for you. Watch out for all the junk mail we're going to send you to. Okay, so that part doesn't sound great. So I'm going to go back over to Gorilla Mail, and look, there's an email. It's from Wombats at What's This Then, and it's your Wombat fact sheet is here. And I can click here, and there's the email, and it's got the link that I want, and I can click on the link. And there is the Wombat fact sheet. And I never had to give anybody my real email address. I love this. And 15 minutes from now, that email address at Gorilla Mail, or I think it goes away completely, or at least I don't care about it anymore because it's not my email address. So I used this temporary email address. That's what I used to get this fact sheet. And I didn't have to give anybody my actual email address. So I love disposable email addresses and use them all the time. And by the way, I'll get you, there'll be a copy of the slides available so you don't have to write down all of these web addresses. Okay, I wouldn't depend on disposable email services for anything secure because nobody knows if the disposable email services are collecting any information they might be. So, I sure wouldn't use them to transfer account numbers or anything like that. The last thing I want to talk about is using good passwords. So the three password commandments are: number one, everybody should be using a password manager like LastPass, KeyPass, Bitwarden, 1Password, Dashlane. There's a million of them, and there are some good ones that are free. I use Bitwarden. Everybody should be using a password manager to keep track of their passwords. And the reason that's so important is it allows you to use a different password everywhere. And that's really important. I remember when the internet first started out, I just picked a really good password and I used it at every website. And that was really dangerous because if a website got hacked, and it might be that the data I had with that website wasn't really important. Maybe it was a website where I played Dungeons and Dragons games. And so if they got hacked, I didn't really care. But if I used the same password there that I used with my bank, then a really crucial piece of information had slipped out. And here's the tip that's a little bit unusual that you don't hear people talk about much, but I think it's really important. Use a password generator. So most of us, when a website says pick a password, we look around the room we're sitting in and we pick a password like computer123 or printer793 or fluffy 777 exclamation mark because our dog's name is Fluffy and he's lying right under our desk. And we have a harder time than you'd imagine, picking a password, a really good password off the top of our heads. So a password generator is really useful for anytime you need a password, you can use the password generator to pick a password for you. Now, all the password managers have them built in. Um, and there are some good free ones out on the internet. Bitwarden has one that's really good. Dashlane has one. And you don't have to be a Bitwarden customer or a Dashlane customer to use these. I didn't like any of these. I didn't think any of them had all the features that I needed. So I'm a software developer. I wrote my own, and it's right there. And this is where I said, I actually do have a connection with one of these. And it's absolutely free and completely anonymous. And I'll show you what it looks like. So if I need a password, I go here, and this is what it shows me. And it's already picked a password for me that I can use if I want, create-6-0. And it picks a password that will meet most of the requirements for most websites. But you can change it if you want. That's a 12-character password. If I want a 16-character password, I can just click here and it gives me a 16-character password. If I don't like that one, 16 characters is what I want, but I don't like that one, I can just click refresh and it'll keep picking passwords for me. And it picks passwords in this case that are made up of words that are easy to remember. But if you want, you can come up here and click the evil button and it'll pick passwords that are just random collections of upper and lowercase letters, digits, and symbols. And you can pick some really nasty passwords. If I want a 25-character password, completely random, there you go. So there's lots of options here, and you can go read it. It's all you can see. There's an explanation of everything down there. So I really like this one. It works completely on your computer, so none of these passwords go over the internet. So there's nothing for anybody to see. So I keep this handy all the time, and when a website says make up a password, I've got this handy, and I can make a really good password right off the top of my head. Okay, I want to mention phones real quick because when we talk about computers and privacy, phones are such an important part of what we do. One privacy tip that I haven't heard very much is turn your Wi-Fi off on your phone when you're out and about because your Wi-Fi has a unique identifier and when you go into a store, they can actually track what you do based on your Wi-Fi. And when you go up to the counter, and I don't know who does this, who doesn't, but it is possible. You go up to the counter, you pay with a credit card. Now they know your name, they know your credit card number, and they know your unique Wi-Fi ID. And now every time you come into the store, they know who you are, they know where you are, they know what you're doing. So this is one of those things that, do I do it all the time? No, I don't, because it's inconvenient. But I try not to leave my Wi-Fi on my phone when I don't need it. Assume that your phone is always being tracked, because it is. And airplane mode doesn't stop that entirely. My dad used to love to watch cold case television programs where they take a murder that happened 20 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever, and try to solve it. And it was amazing the number of murders that got solved because the person had their cell phone with them and they could track it. So um, what I do not want you to take away from this discussion is, if you're going to commit a murder, leave your phone at home. But what I would like you to take to realize about this is that the cell phone company can track your phone. They know where you are. And so just keep that in mind. And if you don't want anyone knowing where you are at some particular time, then yes, leave your cell phone at home. Here's a particular bugaboo of mine. Keep sensitive contact information somewhere other than your contacts app. So what a lot of people do, and this is really to protect other people's privacy, not so much yours, but what a lot of people will do is, I'll create a contact for Fred Smith, and it's got his phone number in it, and I need Google Contacts to know the guy's phone number. But then I'll put in there his birth date, his anniversary, how many times he's been divorced, what his kids' names are, his kids' addresses, all kinds of personal information that I have on that person, I'll keep inside Google Contacts. And that's a really bad idea, because now Google has information to all of that. They know his name, they know his phone number, because that's all in the contacts, and they know all this personal information that you've put in there. So I am a big believer that in your contacts app, just put the information that you actually need your your cell phone provider to know about you. What's the name? What's the phone number? And use something else to keep all that other personal information that you have. You might use OneNote or Evernote, or there's all kinds of note-taking apps you can use to store that information, but don't keep it in your contacts. Couple of odds and ends. Messaging. So text messaging is widely believed these days to not be very private. So there's a couple things you can do about that. A great solution is, instead of using a normal texting app, to use Signal. And they use end-to-end encryption. Anything you text to somebody using the Signal app is completely protected. So I'm a big fan of Signal. I know that there is a new texting protocol called RCS, and I just haven't researched it yet. It's supposed to be far more private and use end-to-end encryption, and I just haven't looked into it enough to know if that's a valid, if that's valid. Okay, and very last thing, I want to talk about friends. Keep in mind that friends are a major privacy leak. So keep in mind that your friends may not be very good at protecting your information. So be cautious about what you give them. We just talked about Google Contacts. If you give private phone numbers to people, they're likely to put it in Google Contacts. So just keep in mind that Google has that now. And one of the things that really bugs me is services like Evite, where somebody's having a 50th birthday party, and so they'll use Evite to send out invitations. So what do? They go into Evite and they give Evite the email addresses of their 100 closest friends. And Evite, and I don't know how much of this Evite actually does, so I don't want to really impugn them. They may have pure motives, but you could imagine that Evite can use this information to build this huge database of who knows what and who has connections with whom. And so when people use services like Evite and similar services, they're really giving up a lot of your private information. And I don't know any way to stop that. I've told a couple of friends, please don't use Evite. If you're having a party, just call me and tell me. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So the best solution to these privacy leaks is number one, get a better class of friends. But if you don't want to do that, educate some of your friends that, hey, maybe you shouldn't store all my private information, all the private information you've learned about me in your Google contacts or in your Apple contacts. And maybe you should find another way to invite people to a party other than using Evite or similar type services. So it's important that not only do you use privacy best practices, but that you educate your friends because they're the people who know a lot of private stuff about you. So there were a lot of, we discussed a lot of different software in here, and here's a chart. And again, I'll be passing these slides out, so you'll be able to get a copy. And there's all the different products we've talked about and where you can get each one of them. Before I close, I'm actually going to do an advertisement for myself, which doesn't get me any money, but I'm kind of proud of it. About a year ago, I did a presentation for you called Computers to the Moon, where we discussed the computers that were used on board the Apollo spacecraft during the moon landings back in the 60s. And I have since written a book. And the name of the book is called Saturn V Step by Step. And it talks about everything step by step that went into launching this behemoth of a rocket. And it starts with about 9 months before the launch, when the parts are shipped from the factory to the launch complex, and how it's all put together, how it's assembled, how the countdown proceeds, and it goes through the entire flight of the rocket. And it took me about 2 years to put all this together. And the best part about this book is it is absolutely free. NASA put it up on their website, and you can go to this NASA link right here. It's part of NASA's history website, and it tells you exactly where to go on the website, and you can download a copy of it completely free. And I would love for this information to just get out there because I don't want to see this information disappear. If you have questions after we're done, I'm glad to take some questions now. There's my email address. You're welcome to send any questions you think of later to me. And that's it. Do we have any questions?
Mark, there's a whole bunch in the chat box that maybe I'll read a few of them and then see if anybody has their hand up, and then we'll continue on with comments and questions. So,
Okay, thanks, Huey.
okay, starting with Jolin, it says, let's see. I use Malwarebytes and Web of Trust in my Chrome browser, but I've been online for so long, I'm on there anyway. And then Bob G said, uBlock Origin is not available for Chrome. And then Drew said, yeah, correct. That's it's gone, but Firefox still has it.
Yeah, so so that's interesting. So I think it will be along before long. So that just happened this year. Google changed the way the browser handles certain kinds of plugins, and I don't know the technical details. And uBlock Origin didn't qualify. I'll bet by the end of the year they've worked around that and it's available again.
And Chris asked, what about Brave? And then he said, thank you for the replies. There's a couple here. Drew reply was Brave is very good, safer than Chrome browser, no uBlock Origin. And Bob G said Brave has its own built-in ad and tracker blocker called Brave Shields. Brave Shields offers similar functionalities to uBlock Origin.
So
And,
So, two comments on that. I really love Brave. It is my primary browser. So, I use some others from time to time for different reasons, mostly for web development, but I really like Brave a lot. And uBlock Origin does work on Brave. I've got it. So I don't know, but you are correct that Brave does have their own blocker, and it's probably good enough. I'm so used to uBlock Origin that I turned off the Brave blocker and installed uBlock Origin, and it does run.
And not seeing anybody with hands up, we'll continue. Uh, Steve Parker says Brave does have Malwarebytes browser guard. And Drew said,
Mhm.
yes, it's a very good extension. And then Bob G says, make sure that the VPN you choose saves or stores absolutely no information. If it does, choose a different VPN.
I agree.
And then Chris Nance, what about CyberGhost VPN service?
So I don't know them, and I didn't, like I said, there's hundreds of providers, and I didn't look at all of them. I went out and found a lot of articles. I spent a couple days doing this and tried to find recommendations from people that knew who owned the VPNs, what information they kept, and the correct answer, as previously pointed out, is none, and um, whether or not they were uh, whether or not there were multiple VPNs being owned by the same company. And so the five that I showed you were the ones that kept showing up over and over and over as meeting all the requirements all these different writers had. So there could be some really good ones that I just didn't come across. Um,
Uh, Drew, you had your hand up for a moment and then took it down. You got
Yeah, I
something?
was just waiting for you to finish.
yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. I'm done.
Um, as soon as I get the copy of the presentation, I'll be putting it up on the STUG website on the meetings page. So if you go to the stug.org and click on meetings, it'll be there in the, I guess we're in July now, so I'll be putting it in the July meeting area. Um, and Portable apps, I have to agree, is a good way to go for portable security. Um, if you have an Android phone, you can load the Firefox browser and use the uBlock Origin extension on your phone if you want to have continuity between your desktop and your phone.
Oh, that's a good tip. Thanks.
Um, and if you want encrypted cloud storage, I would take a look at either Proton Drive or Mega for end-to-end encryption.
Yep.
For sending somebody an end-to-end encrypted email, I highly recommend that everybody get a free Proton email account. You can assign a password. It doesn't do the same PGP encryption that Proton to Proton does, but you can send anybody on the internet a password protected email using the free Proton email software.
Yes.
Um,
I like Proton a lot. And they've got a deal where you can get Proton VPN and their cloud storage service discounted. So I really like Proton.
yes, they're very good. Um, and then if you want to email somebody a sensitive file attachment, and I think I put this in the chat, there's a website called TransferIt, transfer.it. It's owned and operated by Mega, the same company that does the end-to-end encrypted cloud storage. And you can assign a password to a file and then email that file to somebody. And that's about all.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue with the some of the questions in the chat box. Gruen Nation is still on TV in Australia.
Oh, yay.
Okay. Bob G says Proton free VPN is the exception. I'm not sure the exception of what. Jolin says the exception to not using a free VPN. Proton free is good. Okay, so that's
Oh,
what
all
he
right.
was saying. Yeah. Jolin also says encrypting an attachment like this is terrific. Thank you. And Drew says if you want to email someone a sensitive attachment, use this. You can add a password transfer it for encrypted file transfer. That's the one he just talked about, and there's a link. So if you want to save the chats, you want to open up the chat, click on chat. At the top, there's three little dots, and in one of the choices, now usually at the top, they'll say save the chat. And once we close the meeting, that's gone. So, and then for masking your email address, and he's also got a link for that. And AdGuard temp mail, free temporary and disposable email generator. And Drew's got a link for that. It's good for 7 days. And then presentation notes will be available at the stug.org under meeting2.html. And then he's got a couple other links there. Private note taking app is notesnook.com from Drew. And then I mentioned be careful connecting your phone to a car rental. Make sure you delete that information before you turn the car in.
Yes, and don't upload your contacts and leave them there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I add that to the presentation?
Absolutely.
That's a good one.
And then Jolyn says, with a question mark, I have hotspot on my phone and turn that on when going into a store. Is that safer?
Once more?
I have a hotspot on my phone and turn that on when going into a store. Is that safer? I don't know what that wouldn't do anything.
I was talking about turning off your Wi-Fi on the phone. If I'm out and about, I usually turn on my hotspot so that I can access the internet while I'm out. Is that safer than walking into a store and taking the chance of having them?
You don't need to turn on hotspot.
Yeah, just turn off your Wi-Fi.
Just turn off your
Except
Wi-Fi.
that I often need, like, I'll go in and do research about, like in Walgreens, I'll go in and do research on a couple of different types of medication that I'm looking at, and I'll do research on my phone in the store.
Yeah, but the only thing the hotspot will help you with is if you've got a computer that you want to have a Wi-Fi connection to without using the stores. But on that particular unit, it's not going to help you at all.
Yeah, in that scenario, it's not going to do any good.
Even if the Wi-Fi is off.
Turn the Wi-Fi off, and that's it. Just forget about the other one.
Yeah, forget about the hotspot. Just turn the Wi-Fi off.
Okay, and then so it'll just use cellular to access the web.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's why I asked the question. Thank you, guys.
And that's what a hotspot does. It takes your cellular access and makes it and makes your phone then a router or its own Wi-Fi maker, and then you can connect another piece of equipment to it, and you're using the cellular via Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I use it. We have a beach jam down on here on the island every Tuesday, and I use my hotspot to connect so that I have access to the Wi-Fi on my tablet, where we have like 9,000 lyric sheets in our group Dropbox. So it's I use it for that. But I was curious about going into a store and what the benefit or not was of that. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that.
Yeah. We're running real long, but we got a lot of good comments and questions here. So if you're okay with it, Mark, I'd like to continue.
I'm fine.
Okay. Can't understand why you would do this. That was Drew. And that's what we just talked about. Jolyn says, wonderful. Thank you. I'll share the link to the book to our computer club members in the newsletter. And anyone else who is a member of another user group besides STUG, you're welcome to do that as well, I'm sure, Mark, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and where does Safari fit in as a Mac browser?
So I have no experience with Safari, and I've never really looked into it. I'm a little concerned that it's owned by Apple, but I don't know if they're doing anything untoward with it. So I just am not familiar with Safari.
That might be a good question for ChatGPT or
Yeah.
or one of the other AIs. Greg asks, what about sending email to a company you're trying to get So you send your resume to them. Okay, you're trying to get a job. Okay, there's something blocking that. So, well, what about sending an email to a company you're trying to get a job? So you send your resume to them. What's the best way to do that?
Well, so here's the thing. You don't want, if you wanted to be completely secure and private, you would encrypt your resume and then call the company and say, hey, when you get my resume, it's going to be password protected, and here's the password. Would I do that? Absolutely not. Because anything that makes you more inconvenient than somebody else is likely to just swing the decision in terms of somebody else. So that's one place where I think if they say email us a resume, I think you just got to say everything in my resume is public knowledge pretty much, and I'm just going to do it. You might give your resume a once over just to make sure there's nothing in there that you wouldn't want to get out, but if that's what they require to get the job and you want the job, you do it.
Okay, and the final question in the chat is, I was wondering, I have purchased AVG tune-up, and it comes with an AVG VPN. Is this VPN good? And that might be an answer to Bob G if he's still on.
Uh,
Apparently not.
I know the company AVG, and I know VPNs, but I don't know theirs, so I can't comment on it.
Yeah, I worry just a little bit about AVG just because it used to be a Czechoslovakian company, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure where they're based these days.
Some of the ones that were mentioned in the presentation, ExpressVPN, NordVPN, Surfshark, are three very big global companies that are good to go with.
Yeah.
Avast bought AVG.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
Okay. I'm behind on that one. Um, it's probably fine. A lot of the free VPNs, they want to get you to buy it, so they can tend to be a little bit slower than the ones
Yeah.
that you pay for. But if it works okay, it's probably okay.
All right.
The real trick there is if you are interested in VPNing yourself into a specific place, you want to make sure that the VPN you choose includes that place as a place they have proxy servers. So part of your choice is going to be how much global coverage the VPN company has. I like to listen to a Boston sports radio, and I have a VPN that provides me with the ability to pretend that I'm in Boston, so I can listen to local radio stations.
That's cool. Yeah, and
Okay.
funny you mentioned that. I The VPN companies actually have to pay taxes to Australia to have presence there. And so I've seen a couple of the really small VPN companies. This was a while ago that I checked this, but some of the smaller companies would bypass Australia because they didn't want to have to pay those fees. And to me, that's one of the things I want because I like watching Australian programming. So it's a good point, Drew.
Okay, Mark, thank you so much. I'm going to before I turn it over to Ann to say her final thanks and comments. Bill Crow, what's on deck for next month? You're muted. Do you know? He's got to look it up. While he's looking it up, Ann, if you want to make some final comments, you're muted, so unmute.
I'm unmuted now. I just think it was a great presentation, Mark. Thank you so much. It was full of great information. It really was.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you doing this for us. And I know we all have 1,000 questions, so I wrote it all down, and I'm glad to hear that I'll be getting it from somebody else. Come back, will you? Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank all of you for coming this evening. And Bill, are you able to unmute yourself? Go ahead.
Yeah, we're
There
going to
you
have the sheriff's department from here in Sarasota give us a presentation on the scams and hacks that are going on in Sarasota.
That's going to be a good presentation.
You
Yeah,
bet. I'll
yeah.
need that.
So let your friends know even if they're not members of STUG, let's get them exposed to STUG so they can join. And by all means, the beginning Windows meetings for the next 2 months have been canceled for vacation. But Bill's still got this next month, all of July, with the iPad presentations and classes. By all means, get in touch with Bill if you're not on his list. And any other announcements, Bill, that we need to have? My Let's Talk AI worked out very well this past month. As soon as I get my computer back up and running, I will upload the video for it. And we had a really good discussion, really good session this past month. If you're interested and are not on my list, by all means, get in touch with me. And I can add you to the list and you'll get a reminder in our newsletter. So with that, unless there's anybody that's got any other announcements?
Just real quick, I want to
Go
thank
ahead.
you for letting me join you guys tonight. It was terrific, terrific. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, John. As usual, you also had some good comments and questions in the chat, and everyone else who participated in the chat with questions and answers and so on. Thank you, and for just coming here, thank you. And till next month, we'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.